We can be friends, just pretend. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you have not been here before, my name is Debbie and I read a lot of books. I've got an audiobook for you today, and this one is Year of the Flood by Margaret Atwood. So this one is book 2 of the MaddAddam series. There is one more book after this, which I believe is just called MaddAddam. I need to double check that. But yeah, the first one was Oryx and Crake, and Year of the Flood kind of happens at the same time as the first book, with it kind of them both finishing at kind of pretty much the same time. You're just following different characters while everything is going on. So let's just bring up the details. I finished listening to it this morning because I only had about an hour left, so it's just like I'm listening to that while I'm getting ready for my day. Adam I, the kindly leader of the gods' gardeners, a religion devoted to the melding of science and religion, the preservation of all species and the tending of the earth, has long predicted the waterless flood. Now it has occurred, obliterating most human life. 2 women have avoided it. The young trapeze dancer Wren, locked into the high-end sex club, and former secret burgers meat slinger turned gardener Toby, barricaded into a luxurious spa. Have others survived, and what are the odds for the human race? It's in journal fiction, literary science fiction, and is 12 hours and 47 minutes to listen to on audiobook. I listened to it on around 1.5, 1.75 speed, so I did get through it a bit faster than that. This is just a very interesting book series. I didn't really know what to expect going into these books, but it wasn't quite what I thought it was, because it very much reads very religious, because there is a religion at the heart of it, but then also it's set in the future, but it feels like you're reading history. Because I feel like that's just a thing that Margaret Atwood does. Whenever she does a dystopia, she always draws on real-life history, things that have happened before, which is why it's just such an interesting read, really. But yeah, you're following these 2 separate women. You're looking at Wren, Toby, looking at their own lives leading up to what is known as the waterless flood? And it's basically this pandemic that affects everybody. It's a man-made pandemic, as we found out in the first book. So you do see characters from the other book in here. You do see Snowman Jimmy. You see Crake, which is Glenn. And did we properly meet Oryx in here? Kind of. There are mentions of Oryx in here as well. But yeah, it's just fascinating. And I definitely appreciate it as an audiobook. I have a feeling if I was reading the words, it would be a very different experience, which, to be fair, I think there are so many differences between listening to somebody else read it to you versus you reading the words yourself. I mean, obviously, I still consider both to be reading, because you're still consuming the book, you're still consuming another world that somebody else has written. It's just convenient, isn't it? And what's easiest for you? For somebody who really struggles to read, having an audiobook just opens up the mind to countless possibilities. Obviously, I listen to audiobooks when I am walking. That's not a point where I'm going to have a physical book in my hand. Yeah, it just gives you so many more options when there's an audiobook as well. I mean, I've seen booktubers that alternate between reading the book and listening to books at the same time. So they'll have the audiobook of the physical book that they're reading. And so to go between the two sounds like a really interesting experience, which I might have to experience that at some point just to see how that feels, to go from reading the words to listening to it. But yeah, I think the actress who, well, essentially she's an award-winning narrator, but she is an American actress, Lorelei King. Apparently she's been in Emmerdale, she was in Shine Through, Notting Hill, 24 Hours in London, The House of Mirth, but she's also an award-winning narrator, and she's got quite a few things on here that she has narrated. Done quite a few Patricia Cornwell books. She has also did The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. Yeah, there's a lot of books on here. Mainly Patricia Cornwell books, admittedly, but she has done other Margaret Atwood books as well. Yeah, I think she's done all of the Kay Scarpenter books by Patricia Cornwell, which I must admit, that sounds fascinating. Watch me just look like I'm finding another series to read. But yeah, her voice, I mean, there were times when I didn't clock I was listening just to one person, because the way she reads both characters, it really does feel like you're hearing 2 different people. Because as I said, you're hearing from Wren's point of view and you're hearing from Toby, these 2 women. I think Toby's full name is, I can't even say it, Tobiatha? I think that's her name. And then Ren, is she a Brenda or something? I want to say it's something that you don't expect for the nickname Ren. Because it's done in like year 24, year 25, it makes you feel like it's the beginning of the world. But it's not, because there's references to them working in like high-end spas and having phones and things. So it's a bit of a... It feels like there's like timeline problems happening in your head a little bit. Like I can't even say the word. I can't say it. You probably... I'll put it across the bottom of the screen, the word I'm trying to say but can't. But yeah, I just... For somebody who is not religious, but I respect it, like, I respect the history, I understand, and I do respect people with faith, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people who claim to be religious who are using it as an excuse for something. I know that's... I'm going to try not to say too much about my thoughts. But generally I just say, I don't need a God to tell me how to be a good person. I mean, if having faith does help you to become a good person, I respect that, but I don't think that you need a God in the sky to tell you how to be a good person. Morals should be something that people should be able to have without religion. That's just my thoughts on it. I wouldn't call it this like my favourite series of all time, but I do find it very, very interesting. And getting to know both Ren and Toby. I mean, Ren just feels, obviously, because it says she's a young trapeze dancer, you know, she's working in this club, and she comes across very naive, does Ren. And Toby she's a person who likes to take charge. So when their paths do cross, you really do see that huge difference in personality when they come together, with Toby taking Ren under her wing, essentially. It's an interesting one to talk about, especially because it does run side by side with the events of the first book, when you are looking at Jimmy as a snowman and finding out about what led up to this pandemic, and then you find out about those two's childhoods, how they grew up, and then how Craig became Craig, and more information about the virus. I have read that these books have actually been banned in possibly certain states of America. I don't know if it's banned all over America, but I have read about bans of this book in America. And knowing America, I can kind of understand why they banned them. I mean, these books were released, it's like early 2010, so this says this audiobook was released in 2014. So I'm not quite sure when the first one... Also, it was like 2003, 2004 that the first book came out, because that was when it was mainly getting its awards, because it says that Oryx and Craig were shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2003, the Giller Prize in 2003, and the Orange Prize for Fiction in 2004. So it's interesting, the fact that she wrote these books about a man-made pandemic, and then having lived through the pandemic now, I think it does put a different twist on reading them, having lived through a pandemic. So if there is anybody who read this prior to 2020, I'd love to hear if you have read these since 2020, and if that has changed the way you felt about the books. Because I know there's lots of conspiracy theories in regards to COVID, and I feel like this is a series that could, especially, because obviously, like, COVID hasn't gone, we're just going to be living with it now, but when it first came out, obviously, people were dying, we did have to stay inside. This looks at the aftermath of something like that, where they don't have time to respond to it. And in the books, a lot of people die very, very quickly, to the point when, in this book, when Ren gets stuck in a freezer during it all. Was it a freezer? I don't think it was a freezer. I think it was more like a larder type situation. But she gets locked in, and she's there going, well, I'm okay because I've got food. I think she's trying to message people, but she's in a bit of a dead zone, so she's thinking at some point somebody's going to have to come back for me. But there is a television where she's watching the events happening, and she's just there going, I hope that there's somebody else out there who has gone through it kind of like I have, like they were in the wrong place at the right time. And eventually somebody does come and get her out of this larder. So her holding out is a good idea, obviously. But because she's surrounded by food, it means that she's there thinking, well, I'm not going to starve. But yeah, because of the fact that she is watching this all unfold on the television, she's seeing how quickly it's taking over. yeah, it's just interesting to read after living through the pandemic, kind of seeing the similarities and the differences on how things can be handled, and the fact that in these books it's taken back to religion and a new religion, especially because Ren is, you've got like it says that she's a meat slinger turned gardener at this spa, and you've got like Eve 1, 2, 3, like it's all very back to the beginning of like Christianity and things, and I think these would be an incredible series to study in history and religious lessons. Just seeing the combination of the two for a dystopia. I do think these would be incredible series to study, just looking at the religious side of things and the historical side of things. I mean, I don't know how many Margaret Atwood books were on the syllabus. I would have thought that The Handmaid's Tale sounds like it's something that could be on the syllabus. It's fascinating, and practice. It is funny as well. I mean, there's a quote at the bottom here from the New York Times book review, where it says, Atwood is funny, clever, and such a good writer and real thinker. The Year of the Flood isn't prophecy, but it's eerily possible. You're seeing something where it's not completely outside the realms of possibility, which makes it that little bit scarier, while also being funny. And, you know, you've got these two, in this book, The Year of the Flood, the fact that you're looking at it from two girls' point of view, because obviously in the first book you were looking at two guys, but mainly through Jimmy, the snowman's point of view. But in this book you're very aware that Ren knows Jimmy. She talks about Jimmy, she talks about Glenn, who becomes Craig, and just you're watching these stories unfold side by side. So I think the next book, which is MaddAddam, which is already available to me, so I can actually start doing that. From the looks of things, it concludes what happens after these two. Because at the end of both books, they stumble upon kind of like a little camping ground where it's obvious that there are other people who appear to have also survived. At the end of this one, it says that there's about 30 people there. But you've got the Quakers from the first book, the kind of like the created race by Craig. It's such an interesting one to talk about. But yeah, if you're interested in stuff that's kind of science fiction-y, dystopia, but draws on history, I think this would be up your alley. Year of the Flood, Margaret Atwood. You can see the play button at the bottom where I finished it. I need to return this now, and I've just gotten the next one because there wasn't a reserve on it, so it meant I could get it straight away. It's clever, it's funny, it's interesting, it's fascinating, and also terrifying at the same time. I think that's the best way to describe it, really. So the next one is just MaddAddam. Oh, I like the front cover of this one. Kind of like the idea of like when pigs fly. You've got the pig and the bird. So that's good. That one's going to be an interesting one. And that one is 13 hours and 21 minutes to listen to. So yeah, I can get that started. You'll probably see. I just thought that you probably saw that I did the last little bit in on double speed. I will actually also say, before I go, that The Year of the Flood does include music. There's sections where they're talking about like the created psalms for the religion that has been created, and listening to those, some of them are just so stupid, so cheesy, and it felt, but they're quite jazzy songs as well. But yeah, so there's a lot of songs breaking up the text, and not just like somebody just reading the words. It's music, it's a singer. Yeah, it's like a full-on musical production when the songs come on. But yeah, having the music in there as well as a storytelling device. I mean, I don't know how Margaret Atwood was involved in the music side of it, because obviously you won't have that when you're reading the words. You'll probably just have the words of the songs. But no, in this book, in the audiobook, you have the full-on songs. It's a full-on production. But it doesn't actually tell me who sang them. It just says that it was read by Lorelei King. The songs are done by a male performer. So if I find out, I'll pop it somewhere at the bottom if I can find out who actually sings the songs on it. It's such an interesting concept, and I do love a good dystopia. It's mainly for how terrifying it is, and the fact that so many dystopias do draw on history, I just find fascinating. But yeah, Year of the Flood, Margaret Atwood. If you like your science fiction, if you like your dystopias, if you like your history, I think this is a very compelling series to get into. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Don't worry, I'm still reading lots. Other books I've got on here at the moment, I've just downloaded MaddAddam, which is the next one in the audiobooks. I've also got I Loved You in Another Life by David Arnold. That's another audiobook I've got. I have just started 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. I have done a book of hers before and I thought she was brilliant. So I've also got The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard, and I've also got the book 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. In my reserved, I've got The Liar's Girl by Catherine Ryan Howard. I'm on a bit of a streak at the moment with her, as well as the audiobook of The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. Yeah, I'm greatly enjoying my reading at the moment. But yeah, so thank you. I will see you next time with another video. Stay safe. I love you all. Goodbye. Bye.